Okay, and welcome to the Tainted Tavern. And today I've got a whiskey review for you because that is what I do. I drink whiskies and I talk about them. And today's whiskey is a little bit contentious for me, and this is genuinely the first time I've drunk it, and I'm already a little bit dubious about this whiskey. And I'll explain that in a moment because, I'll explain that in a moment. But first of all, as this is a whiskey review, I'd like to recommend you a cracking whiskey book by my favourite whiskey writer. This is The Dark History of Whiskey. It's a whiskey book unlike any other. It takes in the story of whiskey right from its early genesis, way back in the mists of history, to the modern day. Only it gives a slant onto the darker side of that history. Whiskey noir, if you like. It's written by a chap called Gary Dobbs. Really good. Oh, that's me, isn't it? Anyway, that's my book, Dark History of Whiskey. It's available now anywhere books are sold, bookshops, libraries. Get it on Amazon, order it direct from the publisher, those wonderful folks at Pen and Sword Books. A Dark History of Whiskey, but we'll cast that aside now, and let's talk about the whiskey that I'm going to review tonight. Now, I'm of the opinion that blended whiskies are often as good, and that is, they give as good an experience to the consumer, the persons who paid the money to buy that whiskey, as a single malt. Single malts are only a tiny fraction of the global whiskey markets. Blended Scotch whiskey, if it wasn't for blended Scotch whiskies, there would be no single malts. And I often think that the hype and the bombastic stuff you see around single malts is selling a myth, and that blended whiskies can be as good and sometimes even better. But today we are talking about a Johnnie Walker Double Black, and I'm a big fan of the Johnnie Walker Black Label. This is a more expensive version of that Black Label. It's 11% higher in price, in fact, and that makes me a little bit thinking that maybe this is like the Emperor's New Clothes or whatever, because a good example of this is the Johnnie Walker Blue Label, which comes in, I've seen it, is very expensive, Johnnie Walker, because Johnnie Walker's color coded. You've got the entry level at the red label, then we come to the black label, and it goes up. You've got a gold reserve, you've got a green label, but the blue label is the most expensive, and I'm not going to pay 150 odd quid for a blended Scotch whiskey. But I've always thought, I wonder what that blue label tastes like. But I was in work not so long back, surveying a gentleman's house, and the conversation of whiskey came up. And I told him I'm a bit of a fan of whiskey, and that I'd written a book about whiskey, and that is A Dark History of Whiskey. Don't forget, it's available now. And we came on the subject of certain whiskies, and he said that he'd had a whiskey gifted to him by one of his families, and he kind of enjoyed it, but I asked him what was, and it was Johnnie Walker Blue Label, and he pulls us his bottle of Blue Label, and he was half drunk, and I said to him, look, do you mind if I have a little taste of that? Could I have a little glass, a little dram? Because I've often thought about that whiskey but never drunk it, and I had a glass, and it was smooth, it was wonderful, it was lovely, but it wasn't 150 odd pound better than the standard Johnnie Walker Black Label, and that's what leads me on to this Johnnie Walker Double Black. Now, I love Johnnie Walker Black Label, and that's got a 12-year-old age statement, so we know that the youngest whiskey used in Johnnie Walker Black Label is 12-year-old. That's the way it works. If a whiskey has got an age statement, a 15-year-old, an 18-year-old, a 20-year-old, then you know that the youngest whiskey used to blend that whiskey or vat that whiskey, if it's a single malt, is 12, 18, 15, 20-year-old. Now the Double Black, which claims to be a more premium edition of the Black Label, has got no age statement. So effectively, the youngest whiskey used in this blend could be as young as 3-year-old. It can't be any younger than 3 because by law Scotch whiskey has got to be aged for 3 years. So that kind of puts me at warning now. According to the bottle here, this is a full-bodied blended Scotch whiskey with deep, intense flavour. Spiced cloves, ignite dried fruit, orange peel and vanilla, cut through the lingering peat smoke. A blend of specially selected whiskies, including smoky expressions from the west coast of Scotland, matured in heavily charred oak casks for full-bodied intensity. So I'm going to crack this open in a moment, the double black, and pour myself a dram, and let's talk about it. But before I do that, let me give you a little bit of the history of Johnnie Walker.
Johnnie Walker is a brand of Scotch whisky produced by Diageo in Scotland. It was established in the Scottish burgh of Kilmarnock, East Ayrshire in 1820 and continued to be produced and bottled at the town's Hill Street plant, once the world's largest bottling plant, until its closure in 2012, a decision by Diageo which would bring the 190-year association between the brand, and Kilmarnock to an end. The brand was first established by the grocer John Walker, a native of Kilmarnock, who originally established the business in a grocery shop in 1820 with his son Alexandra and grandson Alexander Walker II, being largely responsible for establishing the whisky as a favoured brand. It is the world's highest selling Scotch whisky, but that's the red, and sold in almost every country with annual sales of the equivalent of over 223.7 million. The founder, John Walker, was born on the 25th of July 1805. His farmer father died in 1819, and the family sold the farm. Their trustees invested the proceeds, which was £417, in an Italian warehouse, grocery and wine and spirit shop on the High Street in Kilmarnock, Ayrshire, Scotland. Walker managed the grocery, wine and spirits segment as a teenager in 1820. The Excise Act 1823 relaxed strict laws on distillation of whisky and reduced by a considerable amount the extremely heavy penalty taxes on the distillation and sale of whisky. By 1825, Walker, who was actually a teetotaler, was selling spirits including rum, brandy, gin and whisky. In short order, he switched to dealing mainly in whisky. Since blending of grain whiskies with malt whiskies was still banned, he sold both blended malt whiskies and blended grain whiskies. They were sold as made-to-order whiskies, blended to meet specific customer requirements because he did not have any brand of his own. He began using his name on labels years later, selling a blended malt as Walker's Kilmarnock whisky. John Walker died in 1857. The brand then became popular, but after Walker's death it was his son, Alexandra, better known as Alec Walker, and grandson, Alexander Walker II, who were largely responsible for establishing the whisky as a favoured brand. The Spirits Act 1860 legalised the blending of grain whiskies with malt whiskies and ushered in the modern era of blended Scotch whisky. Blended Scotch whisky, lighter and sweeter in character, was more accessible and much more marketable to a wider audience. Andrew Usher of Edinburgh was the first to produce a blended whisky, but the Walkers soon followed. Alexander Walker had introduced the brand's signature square bottle in 1860. This meant more bottles fitting in the same space and fewer broken bottles. The other identifying characteristic of the Johnnie Walker bottle was, and still is, the label, which since that year is applied at an angle of 24 degrees upwards left to right, and allows text to be made larger and more visible. This also allowed consumers to identify it at a distance. One major factor in his favour was the arrival of a railway in Kilmarnock, carrying goods to merchant ships travelling the world. Thanks to Alex's business acumen, sales of Walker's Kilmarnock reached 100,000 gallons, that's 450,000 litres per year, by 1862. In 1865, Alec created Johnny Walker's first commercial blend and called it Old Highland Whiskey, before registering it as such in 1867. Under John Walker, whiskey sales represented 8% of the family's income. By the time Alexander was ready to pass on the company to his own sons, this figure had increased to between 90 and 95%, a truly remarkable figure. In 1893, the Cardew distillery was purchased by the Walkers to reinforce the stocks of one of the Johnny Walker blends, key malt whiskies. This move took the Cardew single malt out of the market and made it the exclusive preserve of the Walkers. Cardew's output became the art of the Old Island whiskey, and after the rebranding of 1909, the prime single malt in Johnny Walker red and black labels. From 1906 to 1909, John's grandsons, George and Alexander II, expanded the line and had 3 blended whiskies in the market. Old Island, which was bottled at 5 years old, Special Old Island at 9 years old, and Extra Special Old Island, which was 12-year-old. These 3 brands had the standard Johnny Walker labels, the only difference being the colour, white, red and black respectively. They were commonly referred to in public by the colours of their labels. In 1909, as part of a rebranding that saw the introduction of the striding man, a mascot used to the present day, this was originally created by the cartoonist Tom Brown. The company rebranded their blends to match the common colour names. The Old Island was renamed Johnny Walker White Label and was made at 6 years old. The Special Old Island became Johnny Walker Red Label, which was 10 years old. An Extra Special Old Island was renamed Johnny Walker Black Label, remaining 12-year-old. Sensing an opportunity to expand the scale and variety of their brands, Walker acquired interest in Colburn Distillery in 1915, quickly followed by Llanellesh Distillery and Dwlyn Talisker Company in 1916. This ensured a steady supply of single malt whiskies from the Cardew, Colburn, Llanellesh, Talisker and Dwlyn distilleries. In 1923, Walker bought Mortlach Distillery in furtherance of this strategy. Most of the output was used in Johnny Walker's blends, whose burgeoning popularity required increasingly vast volume of single malts. Johnny Walker White was dropped during the First World War, and in 1932 Alexander II added Johnny Walker's swing to the line. The name originated from the unusual shape of the bottle, which allowed it to rock back and forth. The company joined Distillers Company in 1925. Distillers Company was acquired by Guinness in 1986, and Guinness merged with Grand Metropolitan to form Diageo in 1997. That year saw the introduction of the blended malt Johnny Walker Pure Malt, renamed Johnny Walker Green Label in 2004. In July 2009, the brand's current owners, Diageo, decided to close all operations in Kilmarnock by 2012. This met with backlash from local people, politicians, and then First Minister of Scotland, Alex Salmond. Despite petitions, public campaigns, and a large-scale march around Kilmarnock, Diageo proceeded with the closure. The Johnny Walker plant in Kilmarnock closed its doors in March 2012, and the buildings were subsequently demolished a year later. The site is now occupied by Kilmarnock campus of Ayrshire College and Halo Urban Regeneration. In 2018, Diageo announced plans to create the flagship whisky visitor experience on Princess Street in Edinburgh, transforming the former House of Fraser building. After extensive renovations which cost around $35 million, Johnny Walker Princess Street opened in September 2021. The venue offers an interactive journey through the heritage and craftsmanship of Johnny Walker whisky across several floors, featuring tasting rooms and a rooftop bar with spectacular views of the city. Since opening, it has welcomed many million visitors. So, the blends that Johnny Walker currently have is the Red Label, which is a non-age stated, and it's been the best-selling Scotch whisky in the world since 1945, though it is primarily used for making mixed drinks. The Black Label is 12-year-old and is one of the world's best-selling Scotch whiskies. The Double Black, which was made available for general release in 2011 after a successful launch in just travel retail shops, the whisky was created by taking Black Label as a blueprint, adding more peaty malt whiskies to it and maturing it in heavily charred old oak casks. Johnnie Walker Swing, which is supplied in a distinctive bottle whose irregular bottom allows it to rock back and forth. This type of bottle design was originally used aboard sailing ships. It was Alexander the Walker's second last blend. It features a high proportion of Speyside malts, complemented by malts from the Northern Islands and Islay. The Green Label, first introduced in 1997 as Johnnie Walker Pure Malt 15-year-old, it was renamed Johnnie Walker Green Label in 2004. The Green Label is a blended malt whisky, meaning it's made by using single malts with no grain whisky. Gold Label Reserve is Johnnie Walker's Gold Label, was introduced in 1995 as a premium blended Scotch whisky. It was inspired by Alexander Walker's centenary blend, created in 1920 to commemorate the company's 100th anniversary. This blend was discontinued during World War II due to depleted whisky stocks. The 1995 Gold Label relaunch was crafted using Alexandra's original blending notes and was initially bottled as an 18-year-old blend. Johnnie Walker Blue Label. Johnnie Walker's Blue Label first appeared in 1992 under the name Johnnie Walker's Oldest. In 1994 it was rebranded as Blue Label to align the brand's colour-coded hierarchy and to emphasise its elevated status. Johnnie Walker Blue Label is blended to recreate the character and taste of some of the earliest whisky blends created in the 19th century. It bears no age statements, bottles are numbered serially and sold in a silk-lined box accompanied by a certificate of authenticity. It was one of the most expensive blended Scotch whiskies on the market, with prices in the range of US $174 to $450. Over 300 Blue Label-based limited editions have been released to the current date.
Metal cap, not a cork. This is sold as a premium whisky, so they could have at least used a cork. Now, most Johnnie Walker is chill filtered and has got added colourings. It doesn't state on this bottle that it isn't chill filtered and it hasn't got added colourings, so we're going to take it that this is both chill filtered and added colourings. It's a golden amber colour in the glass. Leg-wise, half decent. Not the best legs I've seen on a blended Scotch, but half decent. Let's take it to the nose. Okay, to the nose. It's quite intense. What is this whiskey? 40%, so it's the same ABV as the standard Johnnie Walker Black Label. You can't see the colour in the bottle there because the bottle they use here is a heck of a lot more black. This is Whiskey Noir, just like A Dark History of Whiskey by Gary Dobbs. It's a very intense aroma. You're getting that peat immediately. Now, I do like peated whiskies, which is why I'm such a big fan of the Johnnie Walker Black Label, because that does give you that peated whiskey expression. What is Johnnie Walker Black Label? About 30 something pound, 35, 36 pound. I think this is just over 40 pounds, so it's a little bit more expensive. Although you can find this on offer. I purchased this in Tesco's with a club card deal and got it for, I think, £35, so I didn't pay any more for this than I would for the standard Johnnie Walker Black Label. But as I say, Johnnie Walker Standard has got a 12-year-old age statement. This has got no age statement, but this cheeky little bugger is claiming to be a step up from Johnnie Walker Black. So, on the nose, very intense. That peat I'm not getting an ethanol aroma here. Peat mostly. And that's what we're hoping for from this. Okay, drum roll please. I'm gonna take it. Yeah. Straight away, the peatiness is there on the finish. There's a touch of a burn, but it's smooth. It's incredibly smooth. That peat is there though, and I do love that peat. This is a peated whiskey, which is why one of my favourite scotches is probably the Lefroy. I like the Lefroy 10-year-old. That's really peaty. I like that. But I've drunk a lot of peat monsters in my time. I've drunk an Ardbeg. Smokehead is another peat monster type whiskey, and this does deliver on the peat. But it's a lot more expensive than the standard Johnny Walker Black Label, so what else does it offer other than the peat? It's definitely far more smoky than Johnny Walker Black. I've drunk a lot of Johnny Walker Black, and this is like Johnny Walker Black on steroids. It's oily, very oily. It's got a very substantial mouthfeel. Do you know? This Johnny Walker Double Black it doesn't seem to be a bad dram at all. Is it better than the standard Johnny Walker Black Label? Certainly a little bit more peaty. I'm going to have another taste of that before. Now, usually at this stage I would add a little water to the whiskey and allow it to break it up, but I'm going to take this as is at the moment because I'm enjoying this. The peat on the finish is stringent, smoky charcoal bonfire. Let's add a little bit of water. Just a cupful, because I always do this in my whiskey reviews now. Full disclosure, when I normally drink whiskey of an evening, and I do have a dram at least every night, one dram a night, I do try and drink responsibly. I usually take my whiskey over the ice. I very rarely take whiskey totally neat, unless I'm doing a review, because I believe you should drink whiskey the way you want to, whether you want it in an eyeball, as a mixer, or whether you want it over ice, or whether you want it neat. You shouldn't allow anyone else to influence the way you drink your whiskey. Whiskey is a very complex drink, and you can throw anything in it. You can throw ginger beer, you can throw Coke, you can throw anything in it. You can take it over the ice, you can take it with water, you can take it the way you want it. And for me to take a whiskey totally neat, I usually only do that for an initial tasting when I'm trying to give a review, because I want to give the flavours, the nuances of the whiskey. Let's allow the water to take a moment there and do its thing, because whiskey, even at 40% ABV, is a very strong drink. So let's allow the water to circulate, because the ethanol can act as a prism, and it traps a lot of the flavours beneath that ethanol burn. Is kind of a cage. The ethanol provides a cage. So with the addition of a little bit of water, it of course dials down the proof a little bit, but it does release a lot of the flavours. So we're going to give that a moment, and I'm going to take another pipe on this, another puff on this Red Ambrosia tobacco from McBarron, which is a cherry type blend. If nothing else, it will help clear my palate for the whiskey. Johnny Walker Double Black blended Scotch whiskey. Johnny striding man there on a jet black bottle. Tobacco's good. Okay, now the water's done its bit, so let's take it back to the nose. When you're nosing a whiskey, Leave your mouth open a little bit because it allows the aromas to drift around your sinuses. So I am getting that charcoal bonfire peat. Maybe some fruit now. I'm searching for the vanilla that it promises on the bottle, but I'm not getting that. But taste is subjective. Everyone will get a different experience. Even maybe a little bit of citrus. That was a bit of a greedy mouthful. I've nearly taken it. It's good. It's very good. But then, does it warrant the price increase from the Black Label? It's definitely more substantial in the mouth than the standard Black Label. There's an oiliness to this that the Black Label doesn't have. I can have another glass. I'm not going to add the water this time. The legs are pretty decent. I mean, I can see them running down that glass. Commenting on the comment on the colour of this is a waste of time because, as I say, they've definitely had colourings added to give it that golden coppery kind of tone, so I'm not going to comment too much on the colour or give it any credit for that, given the fact that it uses added colourings, the nose, stringent, peat, bonfire. There is some fruit there. Still not getting the vanilla. Spice, cloves, ignite deep fruit, orange peel and vanilla. Cut through the lingering peat smoke. Well, I'm sorry, I'm not getting any vanilla at all. I am getting a fruity fruitiness, but can't quite identify it. It's good. The question that I asked at the front of this video was, does this deserve to be more expensive than the standard Black Label, given that the standard Black Label is a 12-year-old age statement? This has no age statement. It's certainly a quality whiskey. It's a delicious sip. It's oily, a lot more oily. And that, by oily, I mean it gives a coating in the mouth that the standard Black Label doesn't. So in that sense, it's far superior to Black Label, but it's difficult to say. I think this would be a treat from time to time, and the Black Label would be the main contender, because there's nothing wrong with Johnnie Walker Black Label. In fact, I'm a big fan of Johnnie Walker Black Label. But this is good. It's very, very good. No age statement at all, and very smoky. There's some mild fruit in there. I'm not sure how to... Tangerine, maybe? It's on that spectrum, the orange, citrus, tangerine. It was pretty good. So anyway, that's Johnnie Walker Double Black. More expensive than the standard Black Label, and taste is subjective, so if you want to pay the extra few pounds, then give it a shot. It's a nice drink. And of course, A Dark History of Whiskey by one of my favourite whiskey writers, Gary Dobbs. Available now anywhere books are sold.